Welcome to Using the Roud Indexes, Part 2, brought to you by the Traditional Song Forum. In Part 1 we investigated the philosophy behind the indexes, what goes in, what stays out, that sort of thing. In Part 2 we will be talking about the content and the layout and the features of the data, how it looks on the screen, how you can manipulate the screen. We're not doing searching yet, that's in parts 3 and 4, mainly on the principle that you can't do a proper search unless you know what's in there. So, as always with these tutorials, we start with the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library website, which is where the indexes are hosted. This is vwml.org. And I will also say this at the beginning of each of the tutorials, that if you want to search the Roud indexes only, then you click here. Although we're not searching, it's good to get into the habit of doing this. If you don't click that, you will search all the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library indexes and catalogues plus my indexes all at the same time. Now that might be what you want, but if you're just looking for my indexes, then that will confuse you because you'll get results from all over the place that look a bit different. So for now, we're talking about Roud song indexes and we're clicking there. And another thing about the search is that it defaults to a joint search between the folk song index and the broadside index, my two main databases. If you want to turn one or other off, then you have to go to the advanced search, and we'll be covering that in part 4 of these tutorials. Now you're going to see me do the occasional bit of searching, but that's mainly to bring things up on the screen to talk about, so take no notice of that. So what I've done is brought up, I've done a search for one particular book, Ken Stubbs's Life of a Man. Is in there, and what it's given us is 50 results up here. It always says approximate, but it's usually pretty accurate. 50 results, that's the 50 songs that are in Ken's book. And they are laid out here one after the other. There's song 1, 2, 3. Now it depends what size screen you've got here as to how many you can see. You might be only seeing one. On a wide screen like mine, I can see 3 of them side by side. But fear not, you can scroll with the arrows and go through all 50 hits, or you can go back again. Now this is what we call the full record, because each of these entries for a particular song, so the Haymakers is the first one, Lansdowne Fair is the second, and so on. That's called a record. The entry for one item, i.e. one song, is called a record. And this is called the full record display because it gives you the full item all in one go. And within the record you will have different boxes for different types of data, and they are called fields. It's the way we separate the person's name from the place, for instance. So we may talk about the title field or the performer field, and what we mean is that box that contains that data. Now this is the default display, this full record, but you can, after your search or at any time, click up here, Show Search Results as List. Now if we click on that, we'll see the same 50 songs in the same order, but just the key fields to make you decide, so that you can flip through the book and decide which ones you want and which ones you don't want. You just have a few key fields, and if you want to see the rest of the details, you click on Show All Fields or Hide Fields. That's just like a Google search. Google doesn't give you all the databases that it's found for you. It gives you a list of them and you choose the ones you want. Now there's a third option, plot search results on a map, but that'll come in a few minutes when I've got something interesting to show you on a map. For now we'll go back to show full records, and we're now going to talk about the different fields and what kind of information is in them. And the key thing to remember here is if we've typed it in, if we've entered the data in the field, then you can search for it. If we haven't coded that particular thing that you're looking for, then you can't. So for instance, in a minute you'll find that we put the gender of the singer, so you can search for male or female singers, but we don't put the age, so you can't search for young singers or old singers. We don't put the occupation, that sort of thing. Now before we go on to the main fields here, the ones that you're mostly interested in, there's a little one up here called Roud Folk Song Index. As I said, this search has gone into the Folk Song Index and the Broadside Index, so sometimes it matters where the record has been called from, where it's been found. And you will sometimes find duplicate records because the same thing can be in the Broadside Index and the Folk Song Index. So don't worry about the fact that you've got something up twice. Usually it's because it's in both indexes. But the key thing here is this little number, which is S147513. That designates this particular record. So if you want to tell me that I've made a mistake, and I'm happy to receive emails pointing out mistakes, or you wanted to ask a question about that particular record and why I've put so and so in there, then that's the number to quote. If you quote me that number, I will probably respond. If you tell me it's the third entry that comes up after I've searched for so and so on a Tuesday morning, then I probably won't. Quote me that number and we'll be in business. So, the Haymakers on this first record here, this first entry, the Haymakers is the title of the song, and that's actually a live link. You can search on that and search for all the songs called the Haymakers, which might be what you want, but remember that that will be different songs under that slippery title, or you may not find all the ones, all the versions of that song if they've got different titles. You know, Let's Go A-Haying wouldn't be found by Haymaker, so that's not a very specific way of searching. The first line, or in some cases the first word, sometimes it's actually two lines if they're very short, put in there. Now that's very important actually, that we've seen already that songs have very slippery titles, but first lines are actually more stable. So if you quote to somebody the title and the first line of a song, you've got a much greater chance of identifying the right song. So first line is very useful, and of course a lot of people who don't remember titles may well remember the first line or a word or two in it, so it's very useful. Second field, the here, is round number. Now we've already talked about round numbers. That's the way to pull together all the versions of that song. So rather than searching for Haymakers as a title, you search for 153 and you'll get all the versions under all the titles. We'll do that in a minute because it fits in later, so don't forget that. Other numbers, child and laws, have given numbers to songs. That's what would be there. So if it's a child ballad, the child number would be there. Now the source, I've already said that I've searched for Ken Stubbs' book, Life of a Man. So that's telling you where to find this song. This song is in this book on those pages. Now if you want to know more about that book, you go to my bibliography, which we'll cover in part 5 of these tutorials, and will come up again in a minute. But for now you just need to know that the source is where to find the item. It might be a book like that. It might be a record, an LP record, or a CD, or a collection, published or unpublished. Could be a video. In other words, what we call the carrier, the thing that has that material in it. Performer. In this case, Jim Harbour. And see that we put it in the old-fashioned way of surname first and then Christian name, and if we know a surname, nickname or something like that, then we will put it in brackets. Sometimes you have junior and senior in there, and so on. So he's the person who sang the song to Ken Stubbs for it to go in the book. Then we have place. Now, it says place, but it's really place collected, but it's not. And I'll explain that. You can, by the way, click on, that's another live link, you can view this place on the map, so it takes you, if you don't know where Sussex is, or Three Bridges is, you can go there and look at the map. We're not really interested in the place that this song was recorded from, Jim Harbour. We're interested in where did Jim Harbour, and therefore the song, come from. Now in this case we know that he came from Three Bridges. So he is a Sussex singer, and it's a Sussex song from that sense, in that it was collected there. But if Jim had gone on holiday to Scotland and somebody had whipped out their tape recorder and recorded him singing, that is technically the place collected, but it would serve nobody if we put Scotland in there, because he's not Scottish. The song's not Scottish. He happened to be there, and if we put Scotland in there, then forevermore he would come up as a Scottish singer, and this is a Scottish song. So we're not really keen on where it was recorded or collected. We're keen on where the person came from. And this is particularly important for things like string bands in America who travelled to the nearest town or even to New York to record. A discographer would be very interested in the fact that they went to New York to record it. A folklorist is more interested in where the band came from. Where did the people live? Where did they learn the song? Now that's still quite iffy, because I mean Jim Harbour might have moved to Three Bridges the week before the song was recorded, and he could even be Scottish. But we do our best. If we know that he's only just moved there, if we know he is actually Scottish, then we'll put that. We would put Three Bridges / Scotland, and so on. It's not ideal, it's not accurate, but it's the best we can do. But remember the underlying point. We're interested in where the person and the song came from. Now Ken Stubbs as collector is a little bit more straightforward, but there's still one caveat there. Ken Stubbs, we know, was the man who pointed the microphone at Jim Harbour or took out his notebook and pencil. But sometimes people used intermediaries. So for instance, a professor teaching a course may well send his or her students out to do collecting. Now the students are technically the collectors there, but often we don't know their names. And even if we do know their names, the song may well have ended up in the professor's collection. So sometimes we'll have two names there if we think that they've been an intermediary. Sometimes if we don't know the name of the intermediary, we just put the name of the collection where it's ended up. Date collected. In this case we just know the year, but if we did know the day and the month, it would be there. The year is always given first so that you can sort things in date order very easily. Now there's two fields that follow here. Format is the first one, which really explain about the source. So in this case the book that is Life of a Man. Now format means it says there, this is a book. Because Stubbs' Life of a Man 1970 could actually be a CD, Ken Stubbs singing Life of a Man and his greatest hits or something. Or it could be something else, and often the source is not obvious, immediately obvious, what it's referring to. So it would say here in the format field, is it a book, is it a sound recording, is it a manuscript, that kind of thing. Is it a broadside? That's very important. In other words, it not only explains the source, but it means that you can search for different types of sources. If you only want the broadsides, then when you're searching, you can put format equals broadside. If you only want sound recordings, you can do that. So a field like that is for information, but also very important for narrowing your search. Same sort of thing for the next field, which is source contents. Now we know that some people, especially searching for printed materials or manuscripts, we know that a lot of people will only want the text. So it's no point in searching for something if it only has the music, and vice versa. If you want the music, there's no point in wading through all this stuff that has no music. So for my indexes, the three most important things are text, music, and audio. And audio means that it's a sound file. Music means that it's the written out notation. And text means it's the words. Now we can put in frag text, fragmentary text, if we think that the song is incomplete. It might say reference only, which means that the source just refers to the song. It doesn't give us any detail, like a list of somebody's repertoire or a broadside catalogue or something. So reference only means that we know nothing more than this title is listed in this source. So those are your main fields. They're the important ones that most people will search most of the time. But there's more. Show all fields brings you up all sorts of other things. Now, male and female I've already mentioned. Performer characteristics, the field is actually called. Topics. Now, that's a sort of open field where I can put anything I like, and often I put nothing at all. But if there's some key word in the song or a key phrase that I think somebody might be searching, sometimes I might put a synopsis of the song if it's unusual. In other words, anything that I think might be useful, I can throw in there. Now, it's not a proper structured subject index. The VWML has a project to construct a professionally designed subject index as a searchable thesaurus, and I hope they'll talk about that in one of their tutorials in our series here. But for now, topics, if you're lucky, I've put something in there that will help you to hit on something, but it's not systematic. Author and composer, if we know, well, we don't usually know the name of the authors of traditional songs, but we do for most music hall, parlour ballad, a lot of broadside songs. So if we know who wrote the words and the music and the date, or even the copyright, that sort of thing, then we'll put it in that field. But remember there that we will only put something in here if Ken Stubbs has given us that information in his book. Even if we find out who wrote the Haymakers, we won't go back and type it in there, because that would imply that Ken Stubbs told us that. So that field is only filled in if the source gives us that information. Named tune is for broadsides, because they often say to the tune of. That goes in there. There are various notes field. Printer and publisher is very important for broadsides and for songsters and that sort of thing. The printer or publisher is often the only way to date the item and the songs in it, and also to understand the publishing industry. The printer and publisher is vital. So in there you'd have the printer's name, place of printing, and other things if we know anything about them. And repository, if it's a broadside or a unique or rare songster or a very old source, then I'll put in there the place where I found that item. So it might say the Bodleian Library or Vaughan Williams Memorial Library, or it may well say Steve Roud Collection if I've actually got it. And again, that's important if people want to follow up the information that's in the database. So one last thing on these other fields is X5271. Now that is my code, my bibliographic code for this book, which is why it says Roud Bib Ref. In other words, in my bibliography, that book is given that number, X5271. And in fact, that's how I pulled together all of these songs from this book. I typed in at the top X5271. That was the quicker than typing in Ken Stubbs' Life of a Man. Now, if we go down a little bit on the record, you'll find this record is referenced in the Roud bibliography, X5271. If you click on that, you will go to the bibliography, and that gives you further details about the item. But I won't do it now because I'd get sidetracked, and as I say, the bibliography will be talked about in part 5. So we're left with a few things down the bottom here to talk about, which in some ways are very important. But before we do that, I'm going to go back to this Roud number up here, and the idea that you can pull together every version of this song. Now this is really under searching, but I want to do this so I can show you what it looks like on the map. So 153 gives me 81 results. Don't forget, as I said, some things can be duplicated. For instance, these first two records are to the same broadside. But the important thing here is that you've got all the versions that I've indexed for this particular song under whatever title, from whatever place. Now, if I go to the map, it'll show me not the broadsides and the printed items, but where the songs that were collected, the ones that I know about, the ones I have indexed, here they are on the map, and this shows the power of the map. All of a sudden you can see, in a way that you couldn't in any other way really, is that this song that we know of has been collected widely in the southern half of England, barely at all in the Midlands, not in the north of England, none in Scotland, and 4 isolated versions in Ireland. Now don't jump to conclusions. Don't think that that's only where the song was sung. It's influenced by where people have been collecting, of course. Who was out there in the field. Southern English collectors collected more than Midlands collectors did. I haven't yet indexed all the major collections in Ireland, but I'm working on it. So this is a snapshot, and it's very useful, but it's not the last word. But already you can see how important that is for future research, or for deciding something about this song. The evidence we've got is already indicative, even if it's not conclusive. Now, I won't talk more about the map. You can scroll into the map and look at these pins in much more detail. I won't do that because the VWML, I hope, will include the map in their tutorials. But just for now, remember that a glance at the map can often tell you a lot of things. Oh, and it does cover the rest of the world. If you want to look at America, you have to change the location of the map so that you've got America there, or you can scroll across the Atlantic if you wish. So that's the map. Go back to the full records. And I've got 2 more things to show you in this tutorial, and that concerns the fields down the bottom. Now I've got to go back to my Ken stubs to show you this. Here we are back to Ken's book. Media items, or just media at the bottom here. Now, when the indexes first started, they were just finding aids. This entry just tells you this song is in this book, and go and find the book if you want it. And that's all we could do. But now, with the power of the computer, we can actually scan in the song, so you don't have to go and find Ken's book. You can actually look at images of its pages. Now, we can only do this if the book's out of copyright, or if we've got permission, and if we can get hold of a decent copy to scan. But increasingly, that's what we do in these indexes, and certainly my indexes now have perhaps 10,000 scanned images or sound files, and it will increase. It'll go up as more and more items are added. But in my indexes there are two types of media, and when we say media we mean attached or embedded media. Now in this case, because it's a book, what you've got are the pages of that book. So they are images, they're JPEGs of the pages. Page 1, and there's page 2. And you can in fact scroll through the whole book, because we've scanned in the whole book, but that's not always the case. So that is an important feature, in that you can go straight to the item, instant gratification. Now, in the case of a sound recording, what you'll see there is an icon. So here we have God Bless the Master from the Northwolf and Mummers, and you click on that icon to hear the actual recording. Now I won't play it because it will feed back into my microphone, so you'll have to believe me that if you click on that, it will play you Sid Cole singing God Bless the Master. But the other really important thing down the bottom here, and again this is something that is going to increase dramatically over the next few years, and has increased quickly, very quickly over the last few years, is this field called external URL. Because, as is obvious, a lot of the material that we want to get to is on other people's websites. And so the best thing I can do is to act as a hub or a portal and tell you that this song is on, in this case, the Irish Traditional Music, ITMA. It's in their collection, and it's on their website. It's a sound recording. But rather than just telling you that, I give you the link at the bottom, external URL. Now at the moment that's stuck at the bottom, so it's often missed, and because it's becoming more important, I hope we can get it moved up the record so that it's a bit more obvious. But because it's the last thing that we started doing, it's stuck down the bottom there. So always look for the external URL, because really that's just as good as an embedded image or sound file, because you can get to it with one click. And whereas I've embedded maybe 10,000 items of images and sound files, there's at least way over 50,000 URLs in there now. So always look for the URL, because it's likely, and increasingly likely, that you can go straight to the item. In this case, it's gone straight to the ITMA site, and when possible, it takes you straight to the song. Not even just to the site, it'll take you to the song. and then you can play on, click on it there, and play, in this case, Grace Toland singing As I Rode Out, and a very good track that is. So that's the end of this particular part of the tutorial. You're now ready to learn all about searching in the next two parts, and I will leave you in the hands of Albert Chevalier with Watcho Bill in the Old Kent Road.